What happens when the Soviet Union decides to combine a tank with the frozen hellscape of Antarctica? This wasn't just a truck. It was a moving Soviet base, an unstoppable beast called Kharkovchanka, the woman from Kharkov. In a way, the Kharkovchanka was more than a vehicle. It was a symbol of human defiance. After World War II, the world entered a new kind of battle. Not for land, but for science and prestige. The Americans and Soviets weren't just racing to space. They were racing to the South Pole. The first US expeditions used a massive machine called the Snow Cruiser, but it failed miserably. It got stuck in the ice, abandoned, and later buried by snow. So, when the Soviets planned their expedition, they knew they had to do better. And they did, spectacularly. The Soviets started with something that already worked, the legendary T-54 tank, one of the most produced machines in human history. They stripped off the gun turret, flipped the design 180 degrees, and gave it a new purpose: survival in hellish cold. But this wasn't enough. Regular tractors and modified tanks would freeze, their engines dying as diesel fuel literally turned into solid blocks of ice. Sometimes, the crews had to light fires under their vehicles just to thaw the fuel. So engineers in Kharkov, Ukraine, a city famous for both tanks and aircraft, came up with a radical idea. Let's build a machine that's part tank, part home, part spaceship. In just 3 months, they built something the world had never seen. A 35-ton, fully enclosed, tracked fortress with walls insulated by 4 inches of synthetic wool, designed to lose only 1 to 2 degrees Celsius per day. It had a kitchen, bunks for 8, a toilet, and even a tiny laboratory. Inside, scientists could live and work without ever stepping outside into the deadly cold. They could cook, sleep, and take meteorological readings, all while the machine crawled across the ice. A 900 horsepower turbocharged diesel engine roaring inside the cabin itself, keeping everyone alive with its heat. It could pull up to 77 tons of cargo across the frozen plains. This was no vehicle. It was a moving base, a Soviet Mars rover for Earth. Where no animal could live and no aircraft could safely land, it crawled, carrying warmth, courage, and the fire of exploration into a world of eternal ice. Long before we sent rovers to Mars, humanity sent one to Antarctica, and her name was Kharkovchanka. Unlike earlier American attempts that failed miserably, the Soviets not only succeeded, they built multiple generations of these mechanical beasts that served for decades. The wind screamed at 100 kilometers an hour, tearing across the endless plains of ice. Temperatures plunged below -70 degrees Celsius, cold enough to shatter metal, freeze oil, and turn breath into ice crystals mid-air. In this desolate world, even the sun seemed powerless. And yet, from the white void came a sound that had never been heard here before: the growl of a diesel engine. In the late 1950s, the world was gripped by the space race. But there was another race unfolding far from the headlines: the race to conquer Antarctica. The United States had Operation Deep Freeze. The Soviets answered with the Antarctic expedition of 1959. To reach the newly established Vostok Station, hidden deep within the Antarctic interior, the Soviets needed something unprecedented: a mobile fortress that could drive over glaciers, crevasses, and frozen mountains where no truck or tank could survive. At the Kharkov tractor plant in Ukraine, engineers began designing a vehicle that was part tank, part habitat, and part spaceship on Earth. Its heart, a V12 diesel engine with nearly 1,000 horsepower. Its skin, steel thick enough to withstand the cold. Inside, a home for 10 men, complete with bunks, a galley, a radio station, and even a toilet. Pure Soviet luxury, frozen edition. When the first prototype rolled out in 1958, it was so massive it made the ground shake. Someone joked, "If we can't reach the South Pole, we'll just flatten Antarctica." They weren't entirely wrong. On December 2, 1959, a convoy of Kharkovchankas and support vehicles began the long, terrifying journey from the Mirny station on the coast to Vostok Station, more than 1,400 kilometers inland, through a land where no vehicle had ever gone. The route was a death trap of crevasses, whiteouts, and sub-zero nights. The engines howled constantly. If they stopped, oil would freeze solid in minutes. Inside, the crew lived in constant noise, metal groaning, diesel rumbling, heaters buzzing. But it was still a miracle. They could cook, sleep, and even joke inside while the world outside could kill in seconds. One explorer wrote in his diary, "We live inside a moving planet. The storm rages, but we drink tea." At one point, a Kharkovchanka nearly disappeared into a hidden crevasse. The ice gave way under its massive tracks, and only quick action, and a tow from another, saved it from vanishing into the abyss. That night, the crew welded the damaged track in minus 60 degrees Celsius winds. They called it the night when fire met ice. The second and much larger Soviet expedition brought with them a fleet of heavy-duty tracked tractors designed for artillery transport, called ATTs. These monsters were built on the chassis of the T-54 tank, one of the most produced armored vehicles in history, and still serving in some countries even today. But these weren't just tanks with their guns removed. The entire layout was flipped 180 degrees. The engine, gearbox, and drive wheels were moved to the front, while the crew cabin sat at the back. A smart move for towing massive sleds across the ice. These new ATT tractors were far superior to anything before them. They could haul massive trailers loaded with fuel, which made up around 70 to 75% of their total cargo. Fuel wasn't just for the engines, it was life itself. It powered heaters, stoves, and generators. Without it, the men would freeze to death. This brilliant logistical system helped the Soviets build 2 new research stations, which remained operational until 2019, a lasting testament to their early missions. But even these mighty tank tractors had limits. As they pushed inland, conditions grew unimaginably worse. Temperatures dropped so low that diesel fuel froze solid. To keep it flowing, crews had to light fires under the vehicles, thawing the frozen tanks just enough to restart the engines. When that failed, they literally chopped solid fuel blocks apart like firewood just to feed the machines. At altitudes above 10,000 feet, thin air caused engines to stall, while the brutal cold made metal brittle and rubber crack. Despite attempts to add turbochargers and wider tracks in later missions, one thing became clear: they needed something entirely new. A mobile research base, capable of keeping scientists alive and working in the most hostile climate on Earth. And believe it or not, the inspiration came from the United States. About a decade earlier, the Americans had tried their luck with the infamous Snow Cruiser, a giant wheeled vehicle meant to explore Antarctica. It failed spectacularly. Its tires had no grip, it got stuck instantly, and the crew had to abandon it. The Soviets studied the disaster carefully. Lesson 1. Tracks, not tires. Lesson 2. Keep everything sealed and insulated. Lesson 3. Put the engine inside the cabin so maintenance could be done without freezing to death. And so, they turned to a city that built both tanks and aircraft, the industrial powerhouse of Kharkov, Ukraine. The order was clear. Build us the ultimate Antarctic exploration vehicle. You have 3 months. And somehow, they did it. The Kharkovchanka was massive, based on the ATT platform, but completely redesigned. It had an enclosed, fully insulated cabin covered in 4 inches of synthetic wool, losing only about 1 or 2 degrees of heat per day. It packed a turbocharged V12 diesel engine producing over 900 horsepower, connected to a 5-speed gearbox. Its extra-long, extra-wide tracks let it glide over soft snow and icy ridges like a steel glacier. Inside, it was pure Soviet luxury, by Antarctic standards. There was a kitchen, bunks for up to 8, a bathroom, a workshop, and even a tiny observatory dome so they could navigate by the stars without stepping outside. The engine sat inside the cabin for easy maintenance, though that meant loud nights and diesel fumes everywhere. The heating system and fuel tanks were cleverly positioned under the floor and at the rear, with a special electric snow-melting system and heated windows for visibility. It was, quite literally, a tank you could live in. By 1959, 3 Kharkovchankas were ready. Their mission? To reach the geographic South Pole via Vostok Station, proving Soviet dominance in Antarctica. 16 men, 2 Kharkovchankas, and 1 ATT tractor set off across the ice, towing massive sleds of fuel and supplies into the unknown. They had no maps, no aerial surveys, nothing but endless white. Fuel consumption was absurd, 12 liters per kilometer. The giant tracks wore out in under 1,000 kilometers, forcing 5-day repair stops in minus 60 degrees Celsius temperatures. And yet, against all odds, 20 days later, they reached the South Pole, where they met their American counterparts face to face. It was a symbolic moment. The Cold War had reached the coldest place on Earth. For the next 2 decades, the first-generation Kharkovchankas served tirelessly across the Antarctic frontier. By the mid-1970s, the Soviets introduced Kharkovchanka 2, returning to an external engine layout for better cooling, with improved insulation and comfort. They even added a secondary auxiliary engine to power heating and electricity when the main one was off, solving the old too hot, too cold paradox. 3 new machines rolled off the line in 1975, serving for the next 20 years, expanding the USSR's Antarctic presence and conducting joint missions with other nations. A 3rd generation, the most advanced version yet, was already in development. But then came 1991. The Soviet Union collapsed, and with it, funding for polar exploration evaporated. The new Russia looked north instead of south. The Kharkovchanka program was abandoned, its future frozen in time. Like the American snow cruiser before it, history and politics ended the dream. The remaining 6 Kharkovchankas continued working in Russian Antarctic operations well into the 2000s, silent giants carrying on their legacy. Today, the few surviving Kharkovchankas sit half buried in the snow, engines silent, windows frosted, tables still set as if the crew just stepped outside. They stand as monuments to human ingenuity and endurance, proof that even in the coldest place on Earth, humanity's spirit burns bright. The return trip nearly broke them. 2 Kharkovchankas suffered track damage, metal snapping in the sub-zero air like brittle glass. With no spare parts, they improvised repairs using cut steel plates from their own sleds and welding torches powered by the auxiliary engine. For the last 300 kilometers, one Kharkovchanka had to tow the other, a combined weight of nearly 100 tons. But in the end, they made it back to Mirny Station, exhausted, frostbitten, but alive. When they opened the doors, they found melted candles fused to the tables, frost creeping over the instruments, and the smell of burnt diesel everywhere. The Kharkovchanka had saved them. Again. That forgotten mission proved something incredible. The Kharkovchanka wasn't just a machine. It was a mobile civilization. It could support human life in places no plane could land, no ship could sail, and no man could walk. Long after the Soviet Union fell, a few of these giants still sit half buried in Antarctic snow, rusting monuments to human endurance. And if you ever fly over the vast white expanse, look closely. You might see a red dot breaking through the ice, a shadow from another era, the ghost of the Kharkovchanka, still guarding the frozen frontier it once conquered.